Hello everyone, welcome back once again. I'm Nicodemus Kane. Today is January the 26th of 2023. Now, I know that we're supposed to read Jeremiah 36, and we may still read it. I don't know. It depends on how long I take doing this, but I'm onto an interesting little rabbit hole that I'm trying to figure out. And I wanted to share it with everyone because I can't. It's one of those things you can't prove, but there seems to be enough evidence all the way around for us to at least think, to grasp the concept of what's going on. So the backstory is yesterday, as I always do, I was sitting here listening to YouTube videos while I work. The one video that I ran across, and I don't know if I can find it here. Let me see if I can find it. Was, why is this like this? Usually, my history looks a lot better than this. Why does my history look all weird? Yeah, so of course I was talking about the Mind Unveiled. You know, they have good videos. They do come at it from a somewhat new age slant, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. But they do enough research that I can go find that research to understand that maybe they're on to something. So the one video that they had is talking about pigs are humans. Now, of course, on the surface that says, what? Pigs are humans, really? So he talks about how similar pigs are to men, to mankind, to humans. And he starts with the basics. There's actually, I didn't even know this until I went out and looked into it. Let's see if I can find it here. I did not know. So pigs, apparently, the genetic DNA similarity between human beings and pigs is 98%. The genetic similarities between humans and chimpanzees, which are supposedly, which according to evolutionary science is our closest animal match, is only 96%. Pigs are genetically closer to humans than monkeys are. I did not know that. That doesn't mean anything. None of this really means anything, to be honest. I want to put that out there right now, because I'm going to start quoting some sources that a lot of people are going to be like, oh no, that's not real. Well, okay, that's fine. That's cool. Because yes, this trails off into some really, really weird stuff. I'm going to tell you that right now. It got my brain thinking. Because there's something else going on in the world that we don't completely comprehend. So I started thinking about this, and of course, in the video that Mind Unveiled had done, he started talking about all of these different places where they talked about men and pigs. One of the places was in the Quran. Now, of course, we don't have to listen to the book of the Quran, but it's in there. There's something in there, believe it or not. So it was, I don't know how these, I just have it written down as the Quran 560. and that's all you need to worry about. I don't promote going out and reading it unless you really want to. I'm sure, of course, I say, the only way to understand your enemy is to read their books, so you take that as you will. But I've kind of read a little bit of this in reference to what they're trying to say. At the beginning of this Quran 5, I don't know anything about it. It starts talking about things you can eat. About, what you can and can't eat, what you should and shouldn't, like 5:3 right here says, prohibited for you are carrying blood, the flesh of swine, and animals dedicated to it to other than God. That's, because it's basically a copy of the Torah. So it's talking about what you can and can't eat. So you go down here, and I didn't read through all of this, like I said. I am not even remotely prepared to read all of this. But it comes down here to verse 60, and it says, "Say, shall I inform you of worse than that for retribution from God?" And this is talking about the people that don't believe in their God. This is talking about the people of the scripture. We're talking about Hebrews. We're talking about the children of God. But it's saying, he whom God had cursed, with whom he became angry, and he turned some of them into apes and swine and idol worshippers. So he turned the believers in the Most High God, not in their God, which you can barely even talk about for whatever reason. He turned them into apes and swine. Turned them into monkeys and pigs. Now, I heard that. As soon as he said that, the first thing I stopped and said was, well, wait a minute. We have a book that's apocrypha for the Bible that says almost the exact same thing. So I went digging for Jasher. Now, again, Jasher's not a book that you should follow for any kind of scriptural reason whatsoever. I have probably said that somewhere along the line, but I understand that there are conflicts between Jasher and our Bible. Most of them being numbers, which could very easily be bad translations. So I actually went looking for translations of Jasher, and I could not find anything that talked about like the actual, the text that they used. So you can't say it's real. Now, I've always said that you can't say it's real, but it's interesting. The book of Jasher has things in it that we didn't know, but do correspond to things in the world. Remember, I have said that it talks about the 4 festivals that they used to do, where they would come out into the valley and they would have these like giant sex orgies, and they would produce children in order to sacrifice at the next set of festivities. That's what Jasher says. So Jasher, being a book that you're not even supposed to follow, that you're not supposed to worry about, talks about things that we don't even know but turn out to be true anyways. So no, I don't consider it part of anything that we should read if we're trying to understand a Bible. But it can be used as a book to understand this world. with that being said, because again, I'm not saying any of this is true. This is all just speculation. This is all just, good old Nicodemus over here just sitting back thinking, well, what if this was real? Kind of thing. It would make sense if it was. So this is Jasher 9. How far down is this? 935. This is talking about when God came down and tore down the Tower of Babel. And there were, according to Jasher, there were 3 different sets of people. So 935, Jasher 935. And the Lord smote the 3 divisions that were there, and he punished them according to their works and designs. Those who said, "We will ascend to heaven and serve our gods," became like apes and elephants. And of course, the rest of them, the ones that said that we will smite the heaven with arrows, the Lord killed them, which basically means that we will destroy heaven. God killed them straight off. The 3rd division that said we will ascend to heaven and fight against him, fight against God. Those were the ones that were scattered against the earth. But it was the ones that said they would go to heaven and serve their own gods, to put other gods in heaven. They were made like apes and elephants. Now, I love to talk about the game of telephone through the ages. That when you start at one thing and there's a story told, and you come down through the years, especially if you are separated from the original source, the tail gets twisted just a little bit, gets turned. Also, if the languages are changed just a little bit, the languages change, the names change, it changes just slightly, just enough that it sounds similar, but it's different. So you have the Quran, which is talking about the men of the scripture being turned into apes and pigs. And you have Jasher talking about those that would instill their own gods in place of the Most High being turned into apes and elephants. Now, of course, the first thing you're going to say is, well, that makes sense because, apes are so close to us. They would just simply turn that around. So I went looking for, like I said, a translation to see if that word elephants might be wrong. What if the word elephants really meant something else? What if it meant pigs? What if that's what they were talking about? Now again, this is all speculation, and I just used 2 books that mean absolutely nothing. I just used 2 books that are only there just to read, one of them is there to read what your enemy is doing against you, and the other one is there to read because it talks about things that we don't even know about, which may or may not be true. We can see those things in the world, but it doesn't mean that they're true. So then it kept clicking in my head. One of the first things that God tells the Israelites to do when they get out of Egypt is do not consume certain animals. Not when Noah stepped off the boat. Not when Abraham pulled Lot out of Sodom and Gomorrah. After the Israelites were saved from Egypt, the word swine does not even appear until after Egypt. The word unclean, you get unclean animals whenever you're talking about Noah bringing animals onto the boats, and you bring the clean animals in by pairs of 7s, or 7 pairs, but you bring the unclean animals in by 2s. But it doesn't say pig specifically. It just says unclean animals. The word swine does not appear until after the fact. You have to remember, the Tower of Babel happened after the flood. There's it lines up, but it still doesn't mean it's true. But it lines up as if whoever was writing this really, really thought about this and really, really understood the concept of, maybe there weren't pigs until after. Who knows? Who really knows? I mean, of course, you can get on the internet and you could probably go and see and say, well, they had pigs back in... Blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Did Egyptians have pigs? Let me see. Egypt and pigs. Egyptian pigs. Pigs in Egypt. Pigs were herded, raised, and occasionally eaten throughout Egypt from the pre-dynastic period into the late and Greco-Roman times. So pigs were a thing in Egypt. Why is there no pork in Egypt? Well, it's because the Muslims don't eat pork. Jewish people don't eat pork. Bible tells you not to eat pork. Of course, all of the Gentiles of the world are told to eat pork. And I have found nothing inside of the words of Christ that has told us that we're supposed to eat pork, and yet they've gone out of their way to get the pastors and the preachers of this world to tell us that we can eat whatever the hell we want. That all flesh was clean, all flesh was made clean. Even though, of course, that was... Let me see if I can find it. All flesh must be eaten. And I think it was the NIV. Hold on. I had one of those sneezes that just came out of nowhere. Let me see. Here we go. RSV. What's the RSV? Okay, that's not what I was looking for. Mark, what is it? Mark 7. Let's just go with that. And it's 7... It's in it's not in there. No, it is in here. Oh my goodness, it is. It's right there. That's crazy. Let me see if I can find one where it's got like all the different kinds. So what is it? 14? Mark 7:14. Or no, not 14. What am I doing here? I'm sorry, guys. My nose decided that it wanted to be a jerk today. Alright. So before I do this, let me blow my nose again. Okay, so here we go. I found it. Mark 7:19. Now, let's start with King James, because King James is about as old as you can get on this list, because I don't see any other I don't see any other older translations. I don't even know if we can go to a Septuagint or anything. So King James Bible 7:19, because it entereth not into his heart but into the belly, but goeth out in the drought, purging all meats. And this is saying, it is not it's not what goes into a man that causes him to err from his ways. It's what comes out of a man. It's what comes from the heart. Your New King James Version says, but it does not enter his heart but his stomach, and is eliminated, thus purifying all foods. Okay, that's fine. Let's start going through all of the other verses. New International Version, for it doesn't go into their heart but into their stomach and then out of the body. Parentheses, in saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean. This is a problem. This is why I say you have to understand how translations work. New Living Translation, I don't even know what that is. Food doesn't go into your heart, but only passes through the stomach and then goes into the sewer. By saying this, he declared that every kind of food is acceptable in God's eyes. English Standard Version, since it enters not his heart, but his stomach, it is expelled. Parentheses, thus he declared all foods clean. The Berean Standard Bible, thus all foods are clean. Berean Literal Bible, thus purifying all foods. King James, New King James, New American Standard Bible, parentheses, thereby he declared all foods clean. NASB 1995, thus he declared all foods clean. NASB 1977, thus he declared all foods clean. Legacy Standard, Amplified. It is amazing. The American Standard actually does not even have parentheses. The American Standard Version took the parentheses out, and thus this he said, making all meats clean. No parentheses. Aramaic Bible in plain English, because it does not enter his heart but his belly, and is discharged by excretion, which purifies all foods. English Revised, no parentheses, thus he said, making all meats clean. Your Bible has gone through its own game of telephone through the years. From the 1600s till today, we went from, we're going to say that he didn't do this, oh wait, he did do this, but we're going to put it in parentheses so that you know, to, oh, we're just going to take the parentheses out because now it's just a matter of fact. Even the New King James Version, which is supposed to take the King James and fix the translations, did not put into parentheses, thus he made all foods clean. So no, pig meats, I cannot find it anywhere, not even the dream that Peter had, where he saw the blanket that had all kinds of animals on it. Not even that. Because even Peter himself, later on, says, I had that dream, and God showed it to me, so that I would have the understanding that it is okay for me to eat with Gentiles. That's what that meant. He actually says that. I'm sure somebody could probably point to me and say, well, see, no, right here is where it is. And I'm sure that's where it is. I'm sure that's fine where it is. But that doesn't mean that he made all flesh clean. There are still unclean animals in the book of Revelations. If there are still unclean animals, if there are still unclean things in the book of Revelations, then he did not make all things clean. So if that's true, pigs are part of that unclean, those unclean meats. So I'm sitting there going through it in my head, and I'm trying to figure it out. And like I already said, I don't eat pork anymore at all. Not only do we think that it's some kind of an allergy that makes me sick every time I used to eat it, but I just never liked pork. I never liked the taste of it. Pepperoni was about as good as it can get, and you know what? I can get far better pepperoni out of turkey. I'm just saying, the turkey pepperoni that we're using now is perfect, just fine by me. But I have talked about this before, about how we're not supposed to eat it, yet it is the most pushed food in the world. I mean, everybody knows you can go get a hamburger somewhere. Everybody knows you can go get a steak somewhere. But there is no animal that they push more for breakfast, for the meal that literally means to break your fast, break your fasting. There is no other animal that they push more during breakfast than pig. Bacon, sausage, ham and eggs, green eggs and ham. Think about it for a second. They push these things constantly. Yes, I know steak and eggs is a thing too, but you don't hear about hamburger and eggs. Some people do that though. I've actually tried that before. It wasn't very good. I didn't like it. I just don't. I think at best with a meal, bacon. Of course, we have a turkey bacon, like I said. But it is that most pushed meat. I mean, hell, how many people go absolutely apeshit whenever the McRib comes back? Oh boy, the McRib. You know, everybody talks about how good ribs are. Everybody talks about how good pork is. And it gets pushed a lot. Now, if God tells us not to eat these things, and if this world says it's okay to eat these things, which one's the broad way and which one's the narrow path? You tell me. But what was the litmus test? The litmus test for these things, for anything in the Bible, for anything in this world that you have any questions about, the litmus test is it part of the broad way or is it part of that narrow path? So with all of that being said, with the Bible telling us not to eat pig's flesh, the Quran tells them not to eat pig's flesh. Why? Because it turned people into apes and pigs. The book of Jasher talks about them turning people into apes and elephants. I would like to see the translation of that. I would like to know if that's exactly what it meant. Because it seems like there's two different books that are kind of lining up on the same thing. We know that, where was it at? Humans are genetically similar to pigs by 98%. In the video that I was watching, I didn't go hunting this down, but he was saying that there was some guy that was saying if you take the entire human DNA strain and you take all the letters out, because you know they however they do it, if you take it all out and if you redo it to fit pig DNA, it's perfect. You don't have anything left over. It fits, everything fits perfectly. It has to be jumbled up just a little bit, but it fits perfectly. So you have these kind of similarities going here. There's like these connections happening. And it got me thinking about a lot of other things that I had heard over the years. Let's see, that's Quran. That's Jasher. Another thing that's happening now is they are starting to use, well, they've been using pigs' hearts. I've heard about this since I was a kid. Transplants. That they will use a pig's heart in place of a human heart. Now, I think the only one that actually took was just recently. But I've heard about it since I was a kid. that they've been trying to do these things. Apparently, they also just did kidneys. They got the kidneys to work too. Transplants. Developing pig to human organ transplants. The first trials of pig to human organ xenotransplantation took place in 2021. But they've talked about it for years. I've heard about it as a kid, that you can take a pig heart, but it doesn't last very long. Yes, that's the thing. 1993, I would have been 17. Today, genetically modified pigs offer hope of a limitless supply of organs and cells for those in need of a transplant. Why? Because pigs are closer to humans than any other animal. Now, I always like to point out that, like you talk about ballistics, like the police, or when they're inventing like either a new kind of bullet or a new kind of explosive or something, even the Mythbusters used to use pigs. You used to see it on hell, even what was the on the damn History Channel, one of those JFK conspiracy things. They had two pigs lined up in a car seats to see if a bullet could travel through one pig. This actually happened because we share the same traits. We have the same hairless skin. We have a layer of fat that's right underneath our skin. Plus, we have the layers of fat inside of our bodies as well. Very similar. I think the organs might be in somewhat different places, but it's still all basically the same. So to use a pig in the place of a human for ballistics tests is perfect. It works. They've had these things for years and years and years now. We are so close to pigs. I'm not saying we are pigs, and I'm not saying that we've I'm not saying that we've gone backwards into being pigs, like we've devolved into pigs. But there's still something here. There's still something. There's reasons that these things are like this. Where was the other the Bible verses about the swine? So you've got the Leviticus, and the swine, though he divide the hoof and be cloven-footed, yet he chew not the cud, he is unclean to you. It's because pigs eat death. Pigs eat dead things. There are many stories about mobsters. There are many stories about serial killers that when they're done with a body, they will throw it in a pig pen. Let the pigs eat it. Pigs will eat the bones and all. Eat it clean. This one about Matthew, about never cast your pearls before swine. That's a good one. Isaiah 66, we just read this a couple weeks ago. They that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the gardens behind one tree in the midst, eating swine's flesh, and the abomination, and the mouse, shall be consumed together, saith the Lord. Now that is something that I can go to, since we are right here in Jeremiah. Isaiah, because we just read this a couple months back. I don't remember it so well, but you know how it is. For by fire and this is 66:16. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord will be many, they that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the garden. And remember, this is the end of Isaiah. This is talking about the end times. They that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the garden behind one tree in the midst, eating swine's flesh and the abomination, and the mouse shall be consumed together, saith the Lord. And the abomination. I think I might have even said here, what is the abomination? Well, when you go back and read what was going on in the days of Noah, all flesh was corrupted. Everything. There was some kind of genetic problem. The Bible doesn't expressly say it, but it says that all flesh was corrupted. So much so that there had to be a reset. He had to wipe the slate clean. Were they doing DNA experiments? I don't know. I can't say for certain. Were they causing enough sin to come upon them that their flesh was corrupted? Yes, I'm sure it was. But there's something else going on there. I mean, we're talking about giants. We're talking about angels coming down and mating with women. That flesh was corrupting that way in some way, shape, or form. We talk about the legends of these very weird, strange creatures that are out in the world. You know, the half horse, half man, half goat, half man, half fish, half man. You know, the giants, the cyclopses, the what are they called? The weirdy looking things. Somebody brought this up the other day too, or a couple weeks ago actually. They're a weird mythological creature, but a lot of people have talked about it, and it's actually a worldwide myth of these. They have human bodies but no heads, but their faces are inside of their chests. Something meads. I don't remember exactly what it was. We have these stories, we have these tales of these things that exist. It doesn't mean that they're true, but they're inside of our imaginations, and they're worldwide. Is it just a story being passed from one person to another person to another person? Possibly. Is it something that people have actually seen? Possibly. Again, we have no proof that these things exist. But we have a lot of people talking about this stuff. These abominations. Now, the first thing I thought of was Daniel and the abomination of desolation. That it talks about, you know, when you see the abomination of desolation go into the temple, that you're supposed to, you know, run for it. Isaiah 66:17, they that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the gardens behind one tree in the midst, which is talking about being in the groves, in the gardens, eating swine's flesh. I mean, that within itself, those shall be consumed. Eating swine's flesh, eating flesh of a mouse. I don't know why that's a thing. But then there's, and the abomination. I have said the days of Noah, possibly. Now this is just me. This isn't anybody else, you know. I'm not saying this is true or not. Possibly part of it was because the giants were said to be man-eaters. All giants are said to be, the only two giants I can think of that aren't, well, maybe three giants that, you know, in the old tales that aren't complete man-eaters are like Paul Bunyan and like the BFG and like the Green Giant. Even then, I don't even know if the Green Giant, that's probably why his peas taste so good, is because they're made out of human flesh. I don't even know. That's a joke, by the way. You can laugh. But they were man-eaters. What was it in Enoch where it was talking about when they couldn't find their fill of food in the world, they turned on man. When they couldn't get their fill of food from man, they turned on each other. We are told not to drink the blood, not to eat the blood, not to eat the flesh of men. And yet, in that same breath, the Bible will tell us, don't eat pigs. Again, maybe there's something going on here. I'm not saying it's true because things sound so crazy anymore. And it may not be something that we should even worry about. But it's still, there's this kind of like, it all lines up. It's like it's trying to line itself up, and it's trying to, there's something there that's it's trying to show us something. I wonder if God's trying to show us something with it. I don't know. It's not the first place I've heard these things either. Within the past year, I've heard that man and pigs are basically the same. What do we call it whenever somebody is acting like a complete idiot? We call them a pig. What do we call the money changers of the world? The leaders, the political leaders on the top. Think about Animal Farm. Who was the leaders? They were the pigs. I think of the Pink Floyd song, Pig Man. Ha ha, charade you are, you know? It's pigs. We constantly refer to ourselves as pigs. These things had to have come from somewhere. I was thinking about it today, about the references inside of movies. You want pre-programming? References inside of movies and stuff like that? Of course, they talked about Willow. Willow, where, you know, the Queen Bab Morta turned an entire army into pigs. I was thinking about South Park today, about the pig and the elephant. The pig and the elephant episode. That's like season 2, I think. And they were trying to get pig and an elephant to have sex with each other so that they could have pig-sized elephants. But it didn't work. At the very end, they got an elephant that had Mr. Garrison's face on it. So they can't match pig and elephant DNA, but they can match human and pig DNA. That's crazy stuff. That flows exactly in line with this whole abominations thing. With this whole, you know, genetics, DNA stuff. And this is why I'm even talking about this in the first place. You have... What was the other stuff I was thinking about? I was thinking about the Animal Farm. I didn't write all this stuff down. I should have wrote all this stuff down. I'm thinking about the Animal Farm thing. I was thinking about Willow, about South Park. There was another thing I was thinking about that I can't bring up to my mind right now. Charlotte's Web was another one too. Charlotte's Web, where they humanized a pig. That's what it was. It was humanizing a pig. It was one of the first places. Now, not necessarily inside of the story itself, but it was one of the first places where I, as a child, started humanizing a pig. You hear the stories of the people that will raise a pig in order to turn it into meat. But they can't kill the pig because they love the pig so much. I actually had a neighbor that used to live across the street from us that owned a pet pig. She would walk it on a leash. I am not kidding. I have that picture somewhere. I will pull that picture up if I have to. She used to walk the pig on a leash. This is not a joke. There's something to it. I don't know what, but there's something to it. Going back to the abomination of desolation, I just wanted to go back to that because I completely forgot about it. Rob Skiba used to talk about the abomination of desolation being whenever they would bring pig into the temple. Now, I can't find that, but I do have something here. This is First Maccabees, again, apocryphal. You don't have to believe that one. I would think that Maccabees is closer to the Bible than Jasher is. It's definitely way closer to the Bible than the Quran is. But it's this says First Maccabees 1:55 through 59. Pagan sacrifices were offered in front of houses and in the streets. Any books of the law which were found were torn up and burned, and anyone who was caught with a copy of the sacred books or who obeyed the law was put to death by order of the king. On the 25th of the month, these same evil people offered sacrifices on the pagan altar erected on top of the altar in the temple. Now, what are the pagan sacrifices? It also talks about, there's another place up here too where it talks about, oh, here we are, right here. Duh. I didn't even see this one. I was too busy skimming over other stuff, but see right here it says in Daniel's prophecy, Daniel 11:31, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortress. Then they shall take away the daily sacrifices and place there the abomination of desolation. That's Daniel 11:31. So right here, I didn't even see this. Where are we at? First Maccabees 1:41 through 50. They were even ordered to defile the temple and the holy things in it. They were commanded to build pagan altars, temples, and shrines, and to sacrifice pigs and other unclean animals there. They were forbidden to circumcise their sons and were required to make themselves unclean in every way they could, so that they would forget the law which the Lord had given through Moses and would disobey all his commands. The penalty for disobeying the king's decree was death. To sacrifice pigs and other unclean things there. When the abomination of desolation goes into the temple. That being a pagan altar in which they sacrifice all unclean animals. Now, in my time running around with the satanic groups, yes, I did. I've said before that I was I was closer to being a practicing Satanist than just about anything else whenever I was a teenager. I had never heard of them ever sacrificing a pig. I'm sure it's possible. I've heard about them sacrificing cute things. Again, these weren't like, some of the people I hung out with weren't like, full on human sacrificing, they were following the book of Satan, and they were following, the things that they thought they should follow, but they would talk about sacrificing things like cats and rabbits and things like that. Of course, cats and rabbits, they're unclean. What do you want? I never heard anybody actually sacrificing a pig. Even though, I'll tell you what, it puts a new spin on the Sunday barbecues about roasting a pig. I'm just throwing that out there about cooking ribs. But that's what this says. And again, you don't have to listen to Maccabees. It's a lot of people get really, really hung up on the 66 books that are inside of the Bible. And hey, that's where you want to take it. That's where you want to take it. That's what I'm reading. Eventually, we'll get to the Apocrypha, but I'm not anytime soon. But I'm just saying that none of these books that I'm talking about, you have to put any, you don't have to put anything into them. but they say something that you don't know that matches up with what's going on in the world. I could very easily believe that when Jerusalem was taken over, the first thing they did was to install altars, pagan altars, and to force the people to worship them. Because that's what Daniel did. That's what happened to Daniel. He was taken into captivity, and he was told, you're to eat the king's meat. Well, what was a king's meat? Well, it was something that he couldn't eat. He said, we don't want to eat the king's meat. We want to, we will eat anything else but. He even, he made the deal that, if we eat what we eat, and if your men eat the king's meat, if we come out better than they are, then let us eat whatever we want to eat. Well, they came out better than they are, so of course, or they came out better than the guys that were eating the pig's meat. So of course the king said, okay, fine. You got something going on there, so go ahead and do it. What was the king's meat? It had to be unclean. Were they feeding them cats? Were they feeding them rabbits? Were they feeding them pigs? Maybe. Pigs tend to reproduce in litters. I don't know how fast they reproduce, but they tend to pop out pretty quick. Again, there's something there. There's something going on. Maccabees is talking about a tyrannical ruler that's telling them that they have to worship and make pagan sacrifices, unclean pagan sacrifices. The abomination of desolation, which is the pig. So why are these things so important? Why do you not eat the pigs? Just to take a page from Ancient Aliens. Well, maybe it's because pigs are humans. Dun dun dun. I don't remember what I was watching, what they were talking about that, where they would present all this evidence to you, and then at the very end they would ask the question, but was it aliens? Just the most ridiculous things ever. But again, there's something to it, and when you really start thinking about it, when you really start understanding what it could mean, even the parable of the prodigal son, where it talks about the son got so far down he woke up in a pig pen. That's how low he had gotten. He had gotten so far down with the pigs that he had to go back. I don't want to say that all these things are put in place just to show us that somewhere along the line God turned man into pigs. We can't prove that, and the one book that says that is something, it's a completely different religion, and I can understand that 100%. I can absolutely understand why we shouldn't do that. But there seems to be some other connection happening here. And I'm not going to say it's true. When everything else comes around to it, wouldn't that be the way that God would say, don't eat your own kind. Don't take anything with the blood. Don't eat the flesh of unclean animals. And most definitely, do not pull the ultimate abomination by eating other humans. definitely do not do that. One of the things that it also said in that video was, and I had to go look this up too, and you can look this stuff up. This stuff's out there. Cannibals, like actual true to life, living out there eating human people, cannibals, they say that when you eat human flesh, it is as if you are eating a pig. It's like pork. It tastes like pork. It has the same consistency as pork. The whole deal. Now, when I heard that kind of sealed the deal for me. That cannibals are saying that human flesh tastes like pig. That got me. That made me stop and to really start thinking about this. So, with that being said, with that being said, none of it's, I can't prove a damn bit of it. All we have is different books. Some of the books we're not even supposed to be worried about reading. Other books, you can't prove if they're real or not. A lot of people say that Jasher is, just completely made up. Some people say that Maccabees was completely made up. But your Bible within itself says, do not eat swine's flesh. Do not eat the flesh of unclean things. There was another place too, in Luke. There's a couple places in Luke, actually. There's one in Mark as well, Mark 5. Mark 5:11 through 14. Now there was nigh unto the mountains a great herd of swine feeding, and the devils besought him. Now this is whenever Christ came upon a man that had many devils in him, and the whole thing. And Christ asked him who he was, and he said, "We are Legion." And he pushed out all the devils out of this guy, and the devils besought him, saying, "Send us into the swine, that we may enter into them." And forthwith Jesus gave them leave, and the unclean spirits went out and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down the steep place into the sea. They were about 2,000 and were choked in the sea. And they that fed the swine fled and told it in the city and in the country. And they went out to see what it was that was done. 2,000 swine. These weren't sheep. These weren't cattle. These were swine. The only reason that you'd be making that many pigs is to be able to feed a lot of people. Christ killed a ton of pigs by putting the devils into them so that they could sacrifice themselves off the side of a cliff. The devils didn't want to go into anything else. They didn't want to go into another body. They went into the pigs to kill themselves. It's the same thing with Luke. Luke 8:33. Then the devils went out. Then went the devils out of the man and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down a steep place into the lake and were choked. It's always been there. And Fane knows bellies with the husks that the swine didn't know man gave to him. What is this? What is this? Luke 15? Let's look this one up. One of the things I did before I started this was I looked up Bible verses that dealt with swine. And there are several of them in here. They drew unto him all the publicans and sinners for him to hear, and the Pharisees and scribes murmured, saying, This man receiveth sinners and eateth with them. He spake this parable unto them. What man of you having 100 sheep? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, this is the one about the sheep, about going after the one. So what was the... So Luke 15:16. He said, A certain man had 2 sons, and the younger one of them, this is the parable of the prodigal son, said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided unto them his living. And many days after, the younger son gathered all together, and took his journey to a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. He spent it all. There arose a mighty famine in the land. And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husks that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself, he said, How many hired servants of my father's have bread enough to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father. That he would have filled his bellies with the husks that the swine did eat. Interesting stuff. Not that it has to do with anything, I'm just saying. But it's there again. It's something to it. There's something to it that I can't entirely put my finger on and say, aha! I can't do that just yet, but it's something else that we should at least stop and talk about. There's nothing I can prove. I can't prove a damn bit of it. But there's enough context. Maybe there's something to it. I don't know. I always talked about with Jasher about it, being apes and elephants, because apes do, hell, they look just like us. They act just like us. Of course it makes sense. Apes, we didn't evolve from apes. There's no true proof. And you can't tell me that, some monkey that they pulled from, they pulled part of a jawbone from one place, and they found the rest of the jawbone from, a mile away. You can't tell me that that's proof. That's not proof. You can't tell me that there's millions and millions of bones of just about every other thing in the world, except for all the missing links between chimpanzees and humans. We didn't evolve from apes. But to have a book tell us that God devolved man into apes, That makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. You know? To say that he devolved man down to elephants, that makes sense too, because elephants do a lot of things that humans do. They say that elephants are the smartest creatures in the world. How in the hell is that even possible? Well, what if they shared characteristics of man that we didn't know about? And then what if it's not elephants? What if that word was really pigs? And again, for the two closest DNA matches, apes and pigs, to be that close, and for pigs to share so many similarities to humans, for us to use the term pigs when we talk about ourselves, I don't know. And then your Bible tells you straight out, don't eat this stuff. It goes out of its way many, many times to say, don't eat this, don't eat that. The abominations of them sitting and eating swine's flesh, sitting and eating the unclean animals. Maybe it's because that's what it is. I don't know. There's a lot of interesting things in it, and it could mean nothing. It really could. It could mean nothing. It could mean everything. I don't know. It's just total speculation on my part. It's just, this has been racking my brain all night, last night. And I woke up this morning and it was the first thing I started thinking about. And I said, man, I'm going to wind up just making an hour and a half long video of just me talking about pigs being humans. That's where I am. So I don't know. Something worth contemplating. Something worth thinking about. I'm trying to think if that's everything I wanted to talk about too. All the little coincidences, all the little things. You know? Just the little subtle hints that the world has left us. I don't know. But again, I think the litmus test more than anything else, as far as whether you should be eating pig or not, whether you should be following the commandments of gods or the commandments of gods. You hear me? The commandment of God, the Most High. I am so sorry for that. Or the commandments of men. The ultimate litmus test is, does it follow the broad path that leads to destruction? Or are you following the narrow path, which leads to salvation? That's the litmus test. If everybody's doing it, I remember, nothing is as it seems. Nothing is as it seems. Nothing makes sense when you really put a microscope to it. So I don't know. I don't know what else to say there. Don't listen to me. Don't believe me. I'm a crazy old man with crazy old theories. Just trying to figure it out. You go look it up for yourself. You tell me. You tell me what the hell's going on here. Because I'm just trying to figure this out. I really am. I just happen to see the similarities. And God, it just doesn't make sense anymore. It just doesn't make sense anymore. There's something else going on. So with that being said, I shall talk to you all later. God bless everyone and take care of yourselves. Find it out for yourself. It's not that hard. This is basic Google search. you know? And the biggest one, I found most of this stuff, I just typed in like Jasher, pigs and monkeys. Or, you know, it wasn't even elephants and monkeys, it was like pigs and apes, that's what it was. Pig DNA versus human DNA. That's an easy search. Jasher, elephants and monkeys. Easy search. What was this one? The Quran 5, yeah. You don't have to read it if you don't want to. Easy search, Apocrypha, Abomination of Desolation. Easy search stuff. Let's see what else. God, there's one. Talking about Saturn. Talking about Saturn eating his own children. Egypt, pigs. I was looking up all flesh made clean. Easy searches, guys. Pig transplants. Why do people use pig organs for human transplants? In 2016, they reported that pig hearts could remain healthy for more than 2 years when transplanted into a baboon's abdomen. But why is it that I remember hearing as a teenager that you could put a pig's heart into a man? But of course, that gets into like the heavy-handed talks of transhumanism. This, you know, genetically modifying humans. Just remember through all of this, the most important thing is when God tells you something, you listen to him. When man tells you something that goes against what God says, don't do it. That's where it comes down to. Everything that man does in this world is vanity for the sake of men. Everything that God has told us is for our benefit. Everything that man tells you is for man's benefit. Think about that. All right, I love you. I'll take care of yourselves. I shall talk to you later.